Thank you for joining us for our Facebook Live event tonight. The topic is, you probably know since you're here, mindfulness, your quality of life, and weight management. Let me just say right up front behind the scenes, we have John Niehaus, someone who worked for HMR for 36 years. I've been friends with him all of that time. John started Phase 2 Connections. He offers premier one-on-one support for people wanting to really get aggressive with their work in Phase 2. So if you want concierge coaching, he's your guy. And he's behind the scenes, and he's going to be texting me with anything that I need to know as the main host here. Tonight, I am joined by, oh boy, what a great group here. Coach Gina, first of all, co-host of several Facebook Live events that I've had in the past. Hello, Gina. How are you?
Hello, Rick. Hi, everybody. I'm good.
Good.
I'm really good.
Great to see you. Gina, you run the HMR weight loss and lifestyle coaching program in Natick, Massachusetts, which I Googled earlier today, exactly 18 miles from where I sit. I didn't realize you were so close.
Yes, you'll have to come visit me sometime.
Absolutely. I'd love to. I know several of your members. I would love to do that.
Yes.
My other co-hosts are Catherine. Hello, Catherine. Sarit and Eric.
Hi.
Now, Catherine and
Hello.
Eric are long-term former HMR employees, but more importantly, long-term personal friends of mine. And Sarit, I've known you for over 30 years. Your sister married my brother, Coach Bill, who many people who are watching know. And Sarit, right up front, you bring a little bit of a different experience to the table here. You want to just tease that a little bit for our audience, say a little bit about your experience, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. So I have not worked for HMR ever. I've taken the HMR program in the past, and most importantly, in recent years, I've used mindfulness to lose and keep off upwards of 100 pounds. And without the practice of mindfulness, I would not have been able to achieve that goal.
Yeah. Well, you've said it, the word mindfulness. This is a unique topic. I want to just acknowledge this right up front because mindfulness, let's face it, guys, it can mean a lot of different things, right? You hear someone talk about mindfulness, it can be confusing. It's not clear when people talk about it. It can sometimes bleed into the mystical when people talk about it. So if anyone in the audience is watching and you're new to this idea, you can be forgiven if you feel a little skeptical about what is this and is there anything in it for me? So to that point, Gina, you and I talked a lot in preparation for this discussion tonight about not wanting this conversation to be sort of too out there, if you will.
Yeah.
Just share your thoughts on that.
Yes. So as we start to unpack this conversation about mindfulness, I know for me, when I first think about mindfulness, I conjure up in my mind this image of somebody sitting and meditating in that lotus position.
Yes.
And so sometimes you can lose people because they think that that's what mindfulness is,
Mhm.
that it's all about meditating. And it can be, certainly, but it doesn't have to be. So I want to make sure that this is relatable to everybody who's watching, that mindfulness is for everybody. And the other thing I'd say is there is no right and there's no wrong way to do it. And I think that's important because I know for me, when I first started this journey around mindfulness, I was like, oh, I'm not good at it. I can't sit for very long. My mind wanders. My thoughts are everywhere. And I got sort of caught up in that. And so there is no right. There is no wrong. It is for everybody. You don't have to be in the lotus position. You just have to be aware. And I think we're going to unpack that tonight together. So.
Yes.
Hey, Rick, if I could just jump in real quick too. I've had experience with mindfulness or meditation because my dad was doing it when I was growing up. And I do remember from a very early age, I remember a friend of mine who was very religious that warned me about meditating, that I might, I was dealing with something I didn't know about. And I remember from a very early age too, I had that same thought of this person sitting under an icy waterfall, meditating to koans or something. But the more I've seen, I see more as a tool for just becoming aware of yourself and our little idiosyncrasies and noticing them so you can actually improve them. So yeah, I had that same feeling, but have come to the full circle of no, it's kind of a self-improvement tool and a relational tool.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Really well said too. Catherine, I'm wondering when you were, I don't know the extent to which you invited people to tonight. Was there any little part of your brain that was like, Yeah, we're doing a conversation about mindfulness. I mean, were there some reservations that you had, or like what was your experience in just even speaking to people about the topic tonight?
Absolutely. Yeah, because it is a sort of foreign subject for a lot of people, and it has been for me for a long time too. But I've gotten so much out of it over the years. I dabble in it a little bit here and there, and but I was in my head a little bit about who do I tell about it, who would I not tell about it. So yeah, it's a little it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, we're going to get together and talk about Game of Thrones. I mean, that's what we
It's
talk about. It's clear.
polarizing too.
We might keep a little of that in. There's a sort of a mysteriousness to it. But anyway, and we're going to hit on this multiple times throughout the discussion tonight. So the repetition is intentional and necessary. Guys, when you think about mindfulness, if you were to credential it, now stay a little bit sort of big picture here, because we're going to get into the details much more in a moment. What comes to mind? What's positive about mindfulness? Eric, you had said a little bit more about being aware of your thoughts. Say something else about what you think is the value in this as you apply it to life. And as our title says, maybe even weight management. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, I'm probably more in the life category than weight management. I think for any behavior to change, you have to be aware of it first. And so just the awareness piece for me has been so big. And I know I already said that and don't know that I have more to add there, but the awareness and just how it improves relationships. So many things I wasn't aware of before that I now see happening. And I think my next work for me, not to jump forward, is like improving my ability to respond the way I want to. There are many times when something happens and I see it and I know how I feel, and I remember thinking, I can either like let this go and kind of move forward in a better way, but I don't want to. So my next big move is trying to figure out how to let things go better.
Yeah, but it starts again. You've said it twice now, awareness, and that's where it starts. Anyone else want to just give a broad endorsement of the mindfulness as it relates to any aspects of life?
Yeah, I would love to. I really, what resonates with me, Eric, what you just said, is the sort of the concept of autopilot. We sort of go through life an automatic pilot. We have thoughts, and they're followed by emotions, and they're followed by actions. And most often than not, we don't even stop to think whether those make sense or those are relating to our goals that we want to achieve. And the process of mindfulness for me was to sort of interrupt the autopilot, to press the brake and say, okay, wait a minute, this is the thought, and I could choose a different emotion, or I can choose a different action, and really being in control of that process. That's for me what mindfulness is really about. It's not just about the meditation. Meditation is a helpful tool in being able to recognize the thoughts and to sort of get into your head. But the process itself is that awareness of this is a thought that I've had, 50,000 times in the last year, and I can choose a different reaction this time.
Yeah. Isn't it so interesting that in the 50,000 times, for probably almost all of them, you're not aware that you're having the thought. Instead, you're really identifying with the thought and sort of
exactly
life into what ultimately is just a thought. It's an amazing epiphany when you start to realize, oh, I'm just thinking right now. But Sarit, you mentioned autopilot. I'm glad you brought that word up. How easy is it to go on autopilot with not just thoughts, guys, but how about emotions? How about behaviors? I mean, all three of them. Those are our areas of experience: thoughts, emotions, behaviors. And really, at bottom, the mindfulness just helps us to gain some more awareness of when we are on autopilot in those areas, when it may not be really what we want to be doing if we're thinking more clearly. Catherine, you had waved your hand. Any other broad comment about mindfulness and the value?
I agree with everything that you guys are saying, and I would also add to that I'm a pretty reactive person, and I've worked on it over the years. And mindfulness definitely helps me be less reactive. It's the sort of realizing, okay, you're having a reaction, pausing, taking a breath, thinking about it, and that has certainly, going back to what you were saying, Eric, it leads to more positive day-to-day. If I can stop the reactions, it has me leading to more positive day-to-day interactions, better relationships, and it just in general makes life easier.
Hey, Rick, one other thing that just occurred to me too, found that especially this weekend, I had a chance to practice a lot of empathy. And it's much easier for me now. Like I was just telling my son on a call that hurt people. He was talking about a coworker, some things that had happened. And so we're just talking about, when people are hurt, they will often lash out at you and hurt you too. And this weekend, I just noticed with my dad that I had a lot more empathy for what he might be going through, where maybe before I would just get frustrated and upset and angry and just moved on. But this weekend, I was able to just say, now he must be going through this, this, and this, and move on from that and just have a different perspective afterward.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So awesome.
Yes, and I would like to add empathy towards ourselves, compassion, self-compassion. So relationships with other people are definitely impacted by this. The relationship with myself has changed tremendously as a result of mindfulness practice. And I think that's worth mentioning as well.
That's wonderful.
Can I say one last thing too? Just
Go ahead.
quality of life, so all the things that we're talking about improve our quality of life. Our relationships with ourselves, our relationships with our kids, with our spouses, with our parents, being less reactive, being more responsive. And that of course opens a whole nother, it's just, to me, that's quality of life. And I think that's an important point to what you can get from mindfulness when you practice.
Yeah, you just hit the bullseye for me. Very early on, I'll talk a little bit about the pilot we did in our program, but I was asked, how does it affect your quality of life? My dear Bernie, who just joined us in the comments section. Hello, Bernie. She had asked, well, so give me an example. And my response was exactly what you just said, Gina. I am less reactive, noticeably so. And when problems come up, they just aren't as big anymore. Like I still have problems. I still have probably a lot of the same problems, but they occur to me less as these big, unwieldy, reactive problems. And to me, that might be the biggest thing I've gotten from that, from the whole practice. Speaking of Bernie, guys, let me just sort of summarize this whole little mini conversation endorsing mindfulness right up front. I had asked several of our members who've been working in a more concerted way with the mindfulness skills in a separate track in the program, what is the benefit? And Bernie, I'm going to give you credit again. This was you spontaneously sort of credentialing the mindfulness, and I'll just say, read what you wrote. If your thoughts and emotions haven't been helping you to be the best person you want to be, there is an alternative. And I thought that was just such a pithy, simple but brilliant at the same time endorsement of what mindfulness is. All right, let's keep this conversation going. We want to have offer a lot of sort of heady topics, but also we want to bring some practical things to the table for people to take away from this discussion. We are going to offer a number of resources, and you'll see those resources. We'll post links to them. John will in the comments section. And the first one I want to talk about, I just want to credential this study from Harvard psychologists. It was called "A Wandering Mind is Not a Happy Mind." It's a really fascinating study. And Catherine, just so you know, in the world of research, if you want to really sound like a smarty pants, you don't read the title. You just say, "Oh, you mean the piece from Gilbert and Killingsworth, who are the authors of the study?" So we're talking about the Killingsworth study, Catherine. Okay. So basically, here's what they found. Many of you who I know in the comments section who are joining us have heard this, but let's review it again. Over 2,200 people, 250,000 data points. They had people and they would check in with them on their phones randomly throughout the day. Here's what they found. Half of our waking hours are spent thinking about things that we're not actually doing in the moment. Ruminating about the past, concerns about the future. Maybe there's a little bit of hey, I got a great vacation coming up, but that's not usually the nature of it, because the second thing they found, when people were mind wandering, it tended to bring about negative mood states. In other words, the title says it all. A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. So we're going to put that in the comment section. And it'll also, all of the resources that we'll talk about tonight will be in the description to this event. It's a very short read. It's not even the study itself. It's sort of the marketing piece for the study, but it's a keeper. And it's probably the most quoted study in this field, at least in the reading that I do. So wandering mind, unhappy mind. So the proposition on the table, becoming more mindful, becoming more aware when your mind is wandering, being more aware of when you are thinking about the past or the future or disempowering thoughts in the moment, brings about an ease in your life, which so many of you have just sort of spoken to. Okay, let's keep it going here. I mentioned that we did a pilot in our program, Next Step Lifestyle Coaching. I just want to quickly recap this. Gina, I'd also ask you in a moment to just share, summarize what you do vis-a-vis mindfulness in your program. Someone in the comments section mentioned that that's a part of the work that you do with them.
Yeah.
So here was the idea. We did a pilot in our program. So Bill and I had this thought for a long time, and having our new company, we're able to do things like this. Here was the idea, and you heard this basically in the promo video that we did. Given that mindfulness supports better mental health, and it does, could it support weight management? It really is still an open question. So for 2 months, we enrolled 16 different people very organically within the membership. And we started this pilot. We reached out to our 2 favorite apps. We reached out to the Sam Harris Waking Up app and the 10% Happier app with Dan Harris. And they generously entered into a collaboration with us where we are able to offer extended free access to both apps and also great yearly subscription discounts. Very aggressive. So anyway, we got people started. We actually had people in this pilot starting to do some actual meditating. Not that that's necessarily needed to be a prerequisite going forward, but it really is the laboratory where you start to see the circus of thought in your mind because you're sitting there studying your mind, which is really what it is. There's like a carnival of distraction going on. And so through that, we learned a lot. And Catherine, I will just say in the introductory course, we use the Waking Up introductory course. There are some very brief theory lessons that 5 minutes, and then you sit for 10 minutes and really just sort of start to develop the skills of becoming more aware of your mind. You've said a lot of positive things about those introductory theory lessons. Do you want to just make a quick comment about that before I talk more about the pilot?
Yeah, I mean, right now, so the Waking Up app, I got a lot out of that introductory course, a lot. It's Sam Harris. I joke around with you and my husband, James, who have been into Sam Harris for a long time. And when I listen to long podcasts, I'm like, wow, it puts me to sleep.
Good night.
But the Waking Up app with the introductory course, it's, oh my goodness, it's rich. Like you said, I think it's 5 minutes. It's not even 5 minutes. It's some of them are 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes long, and they're what I call lessons. And then they go into the 10-minute meditation, and that's it. You know, it's a 3-minute lesson and then a 10-minute meditation. But the lessons are the richest things ever. I've gone back and listened to them again and
Me
again.
too.
I take notes, and
Yes.
They're just every word is like, I'm like, I got to go back and replay that. It's incredible. It's incredible. But now I'm doing 10% happier, and I'm getting a ton out of that as well.
Both apps are just amazing. But everyone uses their different apps. Some people like the Calm app, or some people just like to hear the concepts as we're reviewing here, and not necessarily committing to an app. It's all fine. It's all good. The question really is there something in this inquiry about mindfulness that might have some value for you in your life in some way, shape, or form? That's really the broadest question that we want to just keep asking here to our audience and anyone watching the video after the fact. So we did this pilot. We did it for 16 weeks, and it was pretty interesting. 2 months and 16 people. And at the end, we were like, the pilot, we said we were going to do it. Should we just keep going? And as a team, and so many of you are in the comments section and watching right now, we decided to just keep it going. So now it's a separate track. Every Friday we meet for an hour, and it's just been really wonderful. So one of the things I want to say is right up front, because the question was, is there something here that can relate to weight management? I just want to hit on something that Anita, I hope you're watching, Anita brought up right away. as she was just exploring this whole mindfulness thing and doing the meditating, one of the central coaching points is your mind is going to wander, as we just heard in that study. And you need to just catch it and then begin again, begin again, begin again, over and over, begin again without judgment and almost with like a curiosity. Oh, look, my mind just wandered, as opposed to, oh, I'm so bad at this. Oh my God, I can't concentrate for more than 2 seconds. So there's this begin again, put it in all caps in your mind. And she said, this is just such an obvious value of this non-judgmental idea of beginning again that relates to weight management. So guys, isn't that always the case? I mean, Gina, how many times do you say it in your classes? It's like last week is over, whether it was great or not so great, it's time to begin again.
Begin
What
again.
would you say?
Well,
about
I think the thing that's important about that is that when people come in and they've had a bad week, they're bringing in the door with them all of their own judgment and all of their own shame. And so for me to sit in front of them and just give them a safe place that I say, you know what? It is what it is. We're going to begin again. It just reframes it and gives them an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to actually practice healthy lifestyle behaviors.
Yeah.
If they're going to sit in shame and they're going to sit in judgment, they're not moving very far forward.
Yeah.
So I think it's hugely related.
Rick, if I could just jump in too, sorry, Catherine. I need to start putting my hand up too. Not only is it begin again, which I think you could almost boil mindfulness down to begin again. And Rick has been a great, like for me, just has said that so many times. And even in the midst of conflict or whatever, you can just begin again. It has also, like I've always begun again, but it has taken my beginning again window from a week or being upset with my spouse for 3 days to, wow, okay, I can do it in a moment. Sometimes I'm stubborn and I don't, but I'm aware and I can begin again at a much shorter interval than I was able to do before. And that is huge for me.
That's huge.
Powerful endorsement. Powerful. Catherine, that was great.
So back to Gina was saying with weight management, I think there's an obvious connection to weight management. You know, that sure, you had a bad week, but you don't want to undo all the hard work that you already done and just begin again. And you just get back onto the healthy behaviors. And then Eric, what you're saying, I mean, the Sam Harris thing, Rick, and the Waking Up app, he did a whole thing about begin again, where he talks about, so you've had I think it was the Sam Harris one, you've had a bad workout. Okay, it's the worst work, you're having a terrible workout. And then it's like, well, what stops you in the middle of that workout and saying, begin again? You know, the last 10 minutes of this workout could be the best workout you've ever had. Or you could be at a party and having a conversation with someone and you're thinking in your head, this conversation isn't going well. Well, begin again. What, you know, what stops you from making this a really meaningful conversation all of a sudden? Or even bigger, Eric, like you talk about in relationships, he said something about that. It's the foundation of forgiveness, that the only way that you can truly forgive yourself or another person is to really restart the clock in the present and begin again.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you think about the things we suffer most about, you know, a lot of times it's relationships, right? Whatever they may be. Even in like a heated discussion, Eric, you kind of alluded to this, but it's true. There's no rule of the universe that this horrible conversation that you're having with somebody and you're halfway through it, there's no rule that says the second half has to continue the way the first half went. You actually can, if you're mindful enough and are embracing, and this is just one of 100 concepts within the whole mindfulness practice, the power of being able to begin again without judgment. You can turn that around and have that horrible conversation become a wonderful conversation and just steeped in, again, beginning again.
And Rick, you know, this is probably, you guys have all heard me say this a million times, or, you know, it's become a theme in some of our classes of this, like drop the baton thing. But I remember you and I being on a phone call. I was at DFW airport about to travel. And we were talking about, you know, when you have those tense relationships, especially with a spouse or something like that. And I remember you didn't mean to challenge me, but you did. And it was with begin again. You said, Eric, you know, you can always just begin again. You just start over right then. And I remember thinking, no, you can't do that. You could just start over in the middle of an argument. That's not possible. But I thought about it a couple of days, and then I kind of came up with this metaphor of like dropping the baton, you know, thinking of like a 4x4 relay at a high school sprint or whatever. And, you know, it was always the worst moment when you saw that baton get dropped. It was so sad when someone reach out and hands the baton, the guy misses it and drops it. But in mindfulness, we're like
Nope, he's frozen.
handing
No.
our
Oh, he's
angriness
back.
or to our presence. To our present self.
You're here.
And yeah, no worries. And so we just kind of came up with this concept of drop the baton. You know, you can always begin again or drop that baton at any time and just change the course of that conversation, your feelings, your mood. It's not easy. And I will tell you, I'm not the expert at it. I'm aware of it and I try to practice it when I can. But you know, I'm always trying to begin again as quickly as I can when I notice that something like that has occurred.
Yeah, Eric, your "don't take the baton" metaphor was such a powerful moment, and we've just now incorporated it into our ongoing classes. And it really just speaks to the role that we ourselves play in extending our own suffering.
Right.
We can be angry with someone, and you know, the way that you stay angry right through the night is you keep remembering and sort of breathing energy into the story and your point of view. And you're like taking the baton, you're passing the baton to yourself. And then you yourself, because it's a conditioned response, I'm angry and she's the way she's being or he's the way he's being. And you take the baton and then you pass it and then you take it and you pace it. And you don't actually have to take the baton. That's such a great metaphor. All right. So we've hit on two concepts here, guys. Begin again and don't take the baton. Again, we're just hitting on the highlights. For those of you who are watching, if you've been involved with this practice for any amount of time, you know how depthfully you can go into just the two concepts we've talked about. For those of you for whom this is new, all we're trying to do is present to you to be provocative and show that there's a different way of approaching some of life's common, persistent challenges. And this mindfulness offers really a system where there are many tools for doing that. Gina, very quickly, just say a little bit more about how you use mindfulness. It's right on your website. Your website, I love it. Just tell us what that is. And it says, change your habits, change your life. And you say you apply mindfulness strategies.
Yeah. So in my classes, and anybody who's watching, I have a whole bunch of people, so they'll know what I'm talking about. At the beginning of every class, we spend time in what I like to call the mindset gym. And I call it the mindset gym because you need to work your mindset muscles. And I think, you know, people aren't accustomed to talking about these issues, these topics about mindfulness in a group. So we spend time in the mindset gym. We talk about anything and everything having to do with mindset, shifting mindset, growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. The mind that don't listen to your, judgmental thoughts, but start learning to talk to yourself. That was a big one. And I always have a sort of thought-provoking question attached to something that I'll present and a takeaway. And then we move into talking about what I call the work, where the strategy comes in, the systems, the technique, the tools. And I always tell my clients, like, you can have all the tools in the toolbox in the world, but if your mindset isn't there, if you're not aware, if you're not being mindful, it's very hard to use those tools in a productive way. So let's put those two things together, and boy, oh boy, is that magic. And it works really, really well. And I think that my clients love it. So
wonderful.
It's fun. It's really fun. And one
I like
of the
the
things
way
I want
that
to say, about just remembering to be aware. Like, I think that's so important because we are on autopilot, and just to remember to take a minute and be aware of what you're thinking and maybe even why you're thinking it. Get curious about it a little bit. Yeah. So I just wanted to pop that in too quick.
And we will share a couple of specific strategies to help you remember to be aware in a few moments. Eric, go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I like the idea of this, like it's exercise. I think a lot of people think of meditation, and I used to, of literally, I'm just waiting for this experience, I don't know, connection with God or, whatever, like this divine experience that might happen. And what I found more and more of is that I just start over a million times, right? Oh, there's a thought I'm chasing. Oh, wait, no, back to my breath. And I realize it. But what I started noticing was that practice is bleeding into my real life. And so when one of those thoughts come up in real life now, because I've practiced in the gym or exercised or whatever, I'm more able to catch them. And so I like the idea of it being a practice, really, or an exercise, more than, you're not going to try to have some experience. You're really practicing your muscles.
It is a skill. It is absolutely a skill. And the more you practice it, the better you get at it, just like with any skill. I will just sort of, if I could just punctuate, Gina, what you said. You so eloquently talked about there's, the lifestyle side, and then there's the mindset side, and together there's a beautiful synergy there. I would like to sort of summarize that using the eloquent words of someone who's in the comment section. Hello, Charles. Charles, here's Charles in the live in our track 2 Fridays ago. Here's how he described that very thing that you just talked about. The mindfulness track walks hand in hand with the lifestyle coaching and brings it all together mentally for me. The lifestyle coaching represents the mechanics, and the mindfulness is more of the mental functioning that pulls it all together. So again, echoing exactly what you just said. But it's nice to hear people who, we're in the trenches working with people on their weight loss, on their weight management, seeing that there is some real value here. I do think, Gina, we should say it's not like there's, it's not a panacea. It's at bottom, if it just helps you to stay in the game and stay in action with a little less suffering, this
Absolutely.
lifestyle change, then you're getting your money's worth for any mindfulness you practice. Would you agree with that?
I would agree 100%. And again, it goes back to the whole quality of life. It's bigger than just a number on a scale, right? There's so much more to it than just that number, right? Yep. And so, I agree 100%.
All right. So listen, we're 30 minutes in. I meant to say up front, kind of as a joke, but it's true. John said in our preparation, he said, okay, you got to make sure you keep your eye on the clock because, with your co-hosts, you're dealing with a pack of thoroughbreds. That's what he called you guys. I think it was a compliment.
That's funny.
Let's keep this moving, and let's go to the big kahuna here. We have used a lot of concepts and tools. We pull from all sorts of sources. We mentioned the 2 apps. We pull from many different of the wonderful sources out there. Maybe the most helpful tool up front that really brings a lot of the primary concepts to the front is a formula. Yes, a formula. Now, this is a formula that I first was made aware of from this book, The Mindful Geek. By the way, the author, Michael Taft, has made his book available free. You have the link to it on Bill and my website in the program page, nextsteplifestylecoaching.com. You can download the link to it. But in here, he talked about a real leading light, an American mindfulness teacher. His name is Shinzen Young. And he really spearheads a lot of efforts to modernize mindfulness practices. And he's come up with a formula. You guys ready? You know the formula. All right, here it is. P times R equals S. How many of you who are watching, comment in the chat space, know about P times R equals S? And if this is new for you, let me explain what we are talking about here. So P equals pain, R equals resistance, and S equals suffering. John, that's worthy enough for putting that in the comment space. Let's put that in there so I don't have to keep holding it up. P times R equals S. So when we say pain, we're talking about basically any unfortunate event. It really could be anything. It could be, I just stubbed my toe. I always use that example. It could be that you're in a public, let's say you're in a meeting, you're at work, or you're somewhere else, and you really feel like you misspoke. You guys know how icky that can feel? Mm-hmm. How did I just say that? Oh, what are people thinking of me, et cetera? Or it could be you're in traffic. I like to use that example. And you've just got the world's worst driver in the world in front of you. He's hitting his brakes. You're almost getting in an accident. He's going over the line. Something that is not ideal. Something that you don't want to be happening. It could be physical or it could be mental. So that's the P, the pain. The R is the resistance. And this is where we do what we do. We map judgments onto whatever just happened. So I just stubbed my toe. Oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. I'm so I'm so clumsy. Who put that thing there? Oh, this is killing me. Am I going to be able to play tennis later? I think I've really hurt my foot. Who put this here? Who put that? Goes on and on and on. The resistance, the narratives that we map onto whatever unfortunate thing happened, the stories that we tell that are so often disempowering. So you've got the thing that happened, the pain, but then you've got the resistance, the way we breathe life into the unfairness of it all. And then you have your suffering. You're not going to change the fact that you stubbed your toe or that you misspoke in a meeting, if you in fact misspoke, or that the driver in front of you is bad. But really where the suffering gets amped up or can be diminished is in what you're saying about it. And that puts you in the driver's seat, your hands on the controls, not 100%, but of a great deal of how much you suffer in your day-to-day experiences of life. So that's a quick summary of P times R equals S. Catherine, you have an awesome example.
Yeah.
We were deep into talking about P times R equals S with our group. And what happened? Tell about what happened where you found that formula to be really helpful.
Yeah, so I came out of an appointment in Boston and came out to my car, and my driver's side mirror was broken off the car, hanging off the car. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm a pretty reactive person. And so normally I would be nuts. I would just be like, are you kidding me? Who did this? All kinds of stories about the jerk who did it. And why is this happening to me? And blah, blah, blah. And then I'd get on the phone and call my husband and be whatever and be all hysterical and whatever. And of course I had a reaction when I saw my mirror broken off my car. It wasn't a nice thing to come out to. The pain was still there. But because of the mindfulness work, I took a deep breath and I said, doesn't matter who did this. It happened. It happened. What happened? It happened. And I just need to take care of it. Okay, this stinks, but I just need to take care of it. And I thought, I'm not going to call my husband. I'm going to wait till I get home, and I'm going to get home. I tried to put the mirror back. It didn't work. And I thought, well, now I have to merge onto the expressway in Boston during rush hour traffic, taking lefts, going to the left without my driver's side mirror, and thinking, oh my goodness, this is not going to be easy. But I thought, it is what it is. I'll figure it out. I'll get home. I'll call my husband. We'll figure it out. And so anyway, my reaction was way different than it normally would be. So my resistance, which I would call my reaction. And so I got in my car and I got onto the expressway, and it was very interesting what happened because, Boston drivers they can be kind of rude. And I was trying to merge to the left, and I usually would be like, mad, and then instead I would like roll down my window and I smiled at people and I gave them a wave, and like people were going
Crazy lady.
smiling at me, telling me to go over. And it was one of those where I had to keep merging left because the lane was an exit lane and I had to keep doing anyway. I can't tell you, like 3 different times drivers were smiling at me, and I thought, not only was that a better experience for me going home than it normally would have been given the circumstances, but it was, they were even smiling. It's really nice. And then I got home and called my husband, and since I was calm, he was calm. And he said, okay, he said, it stinks. And we'll go to the auto body shop tomorrow and we'll take care of it. And we did. And I got to tell you, the pain never went away. It was a $700 bill out of pocket because our insurance didn't cover that because of our deductible. And so the pain was still there. But the way I reacted to it made the suffering so much less. Just
Yes.
so much.
Yeah. You made the suffering less. I'm going to have Gina, Sarit chime in, but let me just represent from the chat space, Anita, who is here. She was the one who highlighted Begin Again initially in our pilot. P times R equals S. I go there a lot, and she means in a very positive, transformative way in terms of reducing suffering. Bernie says, PRS puts the power reins in my hands. How great is that as a quote? And then Lolita, who is always at the front of the line for dropping the t-shirt comments in the group. That's a t-shirt. She just simply summarized with boom. Boom. Way to go, Lita. Very, very good. I wish I could represent more of the comment. Oh, Jennifer says it's on the fridge. Pizza, I'm sorry. Says.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So Gina, talk to us about the burned veggies and
Yeah.
epiphany about your thoughts not being true?
Yeah, so similar story. I eat a lot of vegetables as a phase 2 person, and I had arranged and prepared 4 trays of vegetables, and they were beautiful. Oh, they were just perfect. Anyway, long story short, I got into a Netflix movie and I forgot about them and they all burned. And, I'm kind of a reactive person myself. And so I remember my reaction. So I didn't really have one. I was like, oh, well, and it was the first time since I was in the mindfulness pilot with you, Rick, that I was like, who is this person? Like, it was really telling for me to notice that, because I just really was like, it's okay. So they burned. Okay, plan B. And it was really an epiphany moment for me. One of those moments where you're like, aha, okay, this actually does work. So I would say that. And one of the other biggies, if you want me to go into the thoughts are not true, I mean,
I would like you to.
That is that is probably my biggest takeaway. And I think this one really relates, at least I can think it relates very much to weight management. So, you don't make any action, you don't do any behavior without a thought behind it and an emotion, like Sarit said, so we convince ourselves that things are true, and it causes a lot of suffering. And so, example, you've had a really bad day, you're stressed out, and you think that the only way to fix your stress is to go home and eat the bag of cookies.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you're convinced that that's the only way, because from your experience, that's what you've done. And well, that's not true. You don't have to eat the cookies. So that thought is not true, but we convince ourselves that it's true. We eat the cookies and then we suffer because we're mad that we ate the cookies. So if you can start to separate and say, wait, get curious, like, is that thought really true? Do I have to eat the cookies? No, I actually have a choice. What is that choice? It opens the door to problem solving. And as you said, Rick, it puts you back in the driver's seat. Now you're in control.
I think it's funny, the convincing ourselves. We don't even really have to convince ourselves that our thoughts are true. We grant ourselves much more authorship. It's just, they're just true. I don't have to, they're so true. What I'm thinking is the 100% truth.
Right.
And so, but your point here, as you relate it to the cookies, or it could be the argument that you're having with someone in your family, is it all starts with awareness. Like, I'm having the thought that I need to eat the cookies, or I'm having the thought that, he really is a jerk. That may just be a thought and not some sort of truth that's been handed down from the mountaintop. Sarit, I'm curious about, you've mentioned more than once to me how P times R equals S. You see yourself breathing more pain and struggle into things that are unnecessary. What are your thoughts on P times R?
I have a really good example, actually, just from a couple of days ago. I woke up in the morning and I was just in a terrible mood. It was self-inflicted pain based on stuff that's happening in my life, and really I have no control over, but I was just literally sitting on the couch at 7 a.m. crying and just being miserable and feeling sorry for myself and all of those kinds of self-deprecating thoughts. And then I get a text from Rick. Says, how you doing? And I responded, not well. And your response was the formula. And it just shook me out of that autopilot that I was on. And cruise control, I was just sitting in the car and the car was going, and I was not literally sitting in the car, but just, metaphorically sitting in the car, and the car was going, and I was not driving the car. I was just going along for the ride. And that formula, I looked at it and I said, I'm doing this to myself. I am putting myself in this suffering, horrible place right now, and I don't need to do that. I could be happy. I could choose to do something different. I could choose to feel differently. And so I did a 10-minute meditation and I let it go, and it completely changed the course of my day. And so I am a great believer in this formula. I think that it's just really, really powerful in terms of again, I keep using the autopilot metaphor because that really feels to me like the tool to interrupt that and to be able to choose and be the driver of your own car, be the one who chooses how you react and how you feel as a result of that interruption. So,
I like how,
so thank you, Rick, and I will continue to use that for myself and for others as well.
I like how caring Rick was, though. You know, he says, "How you doing?" and you say, "Not good." And he's crying, and he says, "Here's a formula."
Yeah, PRS.
A
Well,
lot of people in
You
the
know,
chat
it's
say
exactly what I needed. I needed the tool. It's sort of like, you know, I have a nail and I need to get it into the wall and I don't know how to do it. And Rick just gives you a hammer, you know,
Yeah.
you're like, here you go. Just do the job. And it was perfect timing.
I take shortcuts with you, Catherine. It's even P times R equals S. Come on.
Rick, I wanted to say that Linda in the comments said, yes, Gina, Rick's saying about being in the driver's seat instead of the trunk. I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not even the passenger seat. It's way worse.
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought
Way
that
in the
was
back.
Okay. We've talked about, again, no matter how much we dwell on these incredibly powerful, helpful concepts, we're dancing on the tip of the iceberg. That's it. Begin again. There's immense power in that. P times R equals S. You may not get rid of your suffering, but the goal, and actually, James, you and I came up with this, Catherine, the goal is ultimately to be aware enough of how much you're resisting that and letting it go, that P equals P. That's really what we want. You stubbed your toe and you stubbed your toe and it's painful and you're not adding anything else to blow those flames of suffering higher. And then I have to come back, Eric, because to me, don't take the baton is the extension of P times R equals S. You use P times R equals S in the moment. I'm creating more suffering than I need to. But these are all conditioned ways of being, guys. These are habits, right? Autopilot, Sari. So you will, without even knowing it, breathe those flames in again. You will start to resist again. You will want to take the baton. Sneaky use giving the baton, stay mad at that person, and you are taking the baton to stay mad at that person. So it's really part and parcel. P times R equals S, and be a stand for, I am not going to take the baton. I'm just not. And that's going to get into something, Catherine, you'll talk about in a moment about whether you want to be right or you want to be happy. Okay. I'm being reminded by our dear John in the chat space that time is passing. So let's move into it here. I want to move into some action steps. Feel free, please, those of you who've been practicing along with us in the chat space, please add to what we're going to be talking about here. One of, I think, my favorite teacher, mindfulness teacher of them all, and there are some leading lights out there. I mean, the Dalai Lama on down, and I think I'm not alone. Joseph Goldstein, he happens to have the rarefied status of being in the Waking Up app and in the 10% Happier app, and he should be in both. He's the best. His quote, you guys have heard me say it many times, is the hardest part of this practice is remembering. And someone already said that tonight. Remembering to be mindful. We've got some tools, but we spend most of the time not remembering and we're lost in suffering that doesn't need to happen. So let's talk about some of the strategies for remembering. I want to talk about the pause. I want to talk about the breath. So either one, someone take the baton and talk to me about the importance of the pause or the importance of the breath. What would you say about that?
For
Eric.
me, the pause is that
no,
interruption. Sorry.
Yep.
The interruption of that autopilot, that's the pause. It's remembering to stop and then make a choice about the next step rather than going automatically into it.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like it creates space. It creates space for you to have a response instead of that reaction.
That's it. That is it. That ultimately bedrock of what we're trying to do with all of this, whether it's about weight management, the next behavior you're going to practice, or reacting to your spouse or whatever's happening at work. The goal is to respond skillfully as opposed to reacting unskillfully. And for most people, it just doesn't happen without the pause.
Well, it was a car mirror, Rick, too. When I saw the car mirror and I immediately went into reaction and then was like, pause,
Right.
take a deep breath. It is what it is. And then I was able to react. I was able to then deal with it more skillfully.
Yes.
Yeah, there was something to that count to three thing that we were taught as kids. You know, it really was creating space for you to react and respond the way you want to.
Yeah, that's true.
You know
I have
what?
to say that a woman in a group this week said that when she was being taught to drive, her older brother would say to her, so she wouldn't go through a stop sign, he would say as she started to approach the stop sign to actually spell out stop, STOP.
Hmm.
And she said she now applies that in weight management, that when
Wow.
she's, tempted by something or has had a bad day, her pause is actually STOP. And it does create that space enough for her to ask the question, do I really need the cookie? Or do I just think I really need the cookie?
It's
And
brilliant in its simplicity. Fantastic. Brother Bill shared one that he uses a lot. This one's really great, guys. We haven't talked about this very much. It's a 5-second countdown. So he notices that he's about to respond unskillfully or react unskillfully to something. And there's the aspiration of what you want to do, right? You want to respond elegantly and skillfully. And he finds it helpful to give himself a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breath. And it's like it helps him to just more cleanly wipe whatever was just happening, wipe the table clean, and approach the next moment with a clean slate. So, these are all just strategies that you got to find the ones that work for you. But let's come back to the breath here for a moment, because this one it's central to, there are many different ways that people can practice mindfulness and different ways to meditate. There are different disciplines, there are different teachings, but the breath is a huge part. It's a huge part of this. Does anyone want to just share about anything that you experience when you are taking a mindful breath, that you notice that it makes a difference in how you're feeling in the moment? Anyone want to comment on that?
for me, it just calms me down instantly. I mean, instantly. And I feel like I'm also focusing on something other than me, in my thoughts.
Yeah.
It isn't always about me. So it's just sometimes that breath brings me back.
We've all heard of the fight or flight response.
Yeah.
All right. We've inherited it from the millennia, from our ancestors. Fight, flight, or freeze. Anxiety, stress, because there was danger and we needed to react. Your blood pressure goes up, your pulse quickens, your mouth gets dry, all sorts of things happen. Okay. And it's not very comfortable, but because you're designed to act, I got to change something. I got to be careful. We don't live in that environment anymore. And yet we have the term for it is chronic psychological stress, CPS. And it's our fight or flight response is being activated all day long. So that's a part of our nervous system, the fight or flight response. There's another part of our nervous system, which is what you just spoke to, Gina, which is really our relaxation response. It counters the fight or flight response. They can't be both engaged at the same time. So if you can engage your relaxation response, and probably the number one way to do it is through the intentional, aware, deep breath. You do that, and it helps to tamp down the fight or flight response, or as we relate to it these days, feelings of anxiety, feelings of stress. Why I'm taking the time to share this is because we actually control this. This is a tool that's at our disposal, the ability to pause, maybe do Bill's countdown, but then take the breath, take a few breaths. And what you're doing is engaging your relaxation response. And there are a clear physiological changes that happen in your body. Your blood pressure comes down, your pulse slows down, your breathing gets slower. And Gina, as you just said, you start to feel more relaxed. It's at our disposal. That's why the breathing is just so important.
Hey, Rick.
Hey,
Dan Harris, I heard something today. He said, he was talking about the pause, the breath. And he said, responding skillfully versus reacting. This is the superpower. The pause, the breath, responding skillfully versus reacting. That's the superpower.
The superpower. It calls it a superpower,
right.
secret weapon. You could call it any number of things because no one's doing it. No one out there is doing it. Everyone's reacting and not aware that they're thinking when they're thinking or emoting when they're emoting, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we have one final tool and then we'll wrap it up that we want to review. This one has been very useful in terms of when you're dealing with upsetting circumstances. And if I may just show the backside of P times R equals S, here it is. Separating the facts from the story. So, Catherine, we've got two circles here. You and I have talked about this an awful lot through the years. Talk a little bit about how this simple construct, and I recommend if anyone in the audience is not familiar with this and you're dealing with any circumstances that are unsettling to you, literally get a piece of paper out, draw two circles, and start to practice the discipline of, Catherine, you start it and I'll chime in along with everybody else.
Yeah, so real quick, the easiest explanation, the one that landed with me really right from the beginning when I heard this concept, that landed with, it's really simple. You're walking down the street, you trip, okay? You trip. And the fact is you trip, but then the story that's in your head is, I'm such a klutz, I'm so uncoordinated, I'm such an idiot, I'm so embarrassed, people are laughing at me. There's this whole millions of story that goes, the fact is you tripped. Story is everything else that you just made up in your head. All the fact is that you trip. But of course, this is in everyday life, the facts versus the story. So, you know, I mean, I could tell a million stories, and this, of course, happens in relationships all the time with your spouses, with whatever. But, you know, I'll give, you know, like a silly one where, you know, I have a friend who doesn't return my texts right away. And the fact is they don't return my text right away. The story I make up about this is crazy. I mean, it's crazy. You know, they don't care about me. They're doing this on purpose. It's like, it goes on and on and on. And the fact is, the story could be a million things. They could be busy. Their phone's not working. They don't like to text. Whatever. There's a million stories that you can make up. But, you know, what we do with it is just crazy in our heads. But when you stop and you say, okay, when I start getting worked up, I'm like, wait a minute, what's the fact? What's just happened? And what are the stories that are going on in my head? What are these thoughts that I'm creating?
Yeah, I'm not important to him. He's inconsiderate. So you've got the facts. He doesn't respond to texts on time often. That's it. Those are the brute facts on the ground. And then you've got your story. He's inconsiderate. He, you know, whatever. He's not respecting my time, et cetera, not a priority.
He doesn't like me.
He doesn't like me, right? But notice those lines, they intersect, because where they intersect, we take the facts and our story and we act like that's the truth, all caps. When in fact, if you could start this practice of separating, well, what really happened? What are the actual, just the facts, ma'am? He said, he did. I said, I did. She said, she did. This happened, that happened. Those are the facts. Everything else is the meaning that we map onto it, the story, the disempowering narratives, and we turn it into this little wedge that we call how it is, how he is, how she is, how things are. And they're so not often not that way. So it's a real
resonates. It really resonates with weight loss, weight management as well, because the fact is that I ate a cookie. And the cookie was 150 calories. And the story that I make myself believe is that my diet is ruined. I'm going to be fat. Nobody's going to like me. Everybody's going to think I'm a failure. I'm a failure. All these stories because I ate a cookie. And that's something, you know, again, interrupting that and saying, so I ate a cookie, you know, move on with your life. You don't have to tell all these stories.
Begin again, exactly. Begin again.
Enjoy the cookie, you know, like, why not?
And then the story makes you eat more cookies.
That's
And
right.
then there's a bigger story.
That's
and
right.
so on down the line.
And in the relationships, when you don't separate it out and you keep going on with the story, you reinforce your story and why you have every right to be angry, and that anger keeps going, and it can wreck relationships. I mean, it can.
Listen, we're approaching the top of the hour. Sarit, you brought it back, and I'm glad you did, to weight management. I'd like to maybe just ask you to share just a little bit more of your history and any final thoughts that you'd have about the value of mindfulness as it has supported your own journey with your weight, because you've been extremely successful. So let's just hear a little bit more from you on that, and then we'll wrap this up.
Sure. So I spent most of my adult life being obese, living in the obese category of my weight, and warned by doctors at all kinds of health risks. And my A1C was rising, and all kinds of health things started to happen as a result of the weight. And then I started listening to a podcast that talked about changing your mindset in how you think about weight management. And I stopped dieting. I've dieted all my way to gaining 100 pounds over 25 years. And I stopped dieting and started eating a diet, as in a deer's diet is berries and twigs, right? So my diet is the food that I eat, not something that I go on for a period of time in order to achieve a weight goal or something like that. I began to exercise. I began to eating mindfully and really thinking about eating and exercising in a way that was going to achieve goals, very, very slow goals. So my weight loss was very slow, and I didn't stop eating cookies and chips and ice cream. I ate all of these things while also doing all of the other activities, and I enjoyed every single thing in a mindful way. And in the period of 3 years, I lost 100 pounds, and I've been keeping 80 of them off, despite all kinds of challenges in my life, because I've been able to use the mindfulness to remind me of my goals and to help me interrupt the autopilot when it starts to happen, because habits that were gained over 25 years are very difficult to just abruptly stop. So this is a practice. It's not perfect. Just like Eric said, you don't always catch yourself in time, but I'm getting a lot better at catching myself a lot sooner, and going back into the healthy habits that support my goals and where I want to be and how I want to live my life. My health improved greatly. I'm no longer pre-diabetic. I'm practicing for a 5-mile run for my birthday in November. And so I'm achieving a lot of goals and a lot of dreams that I never thought I would, as a result of changing my mindset about the process.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you've talked to me, over the time that we've been talking about this, it's so clear to me that your practice to be more aware of your thoughts has given you access to managing your emotions better. And
Yes.
that is such an important part of what I'm hoping we can continue to uncover as we look to apply mindfulness to the whole challenging work of managing one's weight. So thank you for sharing that, Sarit. That's awesome. So awesome. Congratulations and well done.
You.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right,
Inspiring,
guys.
very inspiring.
We're at the top of the hour. I guess I would ask our audience, did the team of thoroughbreds get the job done? We've covered a lot here. I think I would just end by saying we do feel like there is an opportunity here for everyone. Everyone, you have to see what works for you. Mindfulness is a concept. It's a practice, as Eric, you were saying, that is growing in popularity for good reason. Maybe there's a role for it in your life in some way, shape, or form. It will certainly support your relationships, which at bottom, this is so central to our happiness, friends, family, at work, but really your relationship with yourself, Sarit, which is sort of what you've been alluding to.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
by extension, maybe this practice could add some real value in helping you to stay on track and stay in action with your weight. So we hope so. We hope the conversation has been provocative and fast moving and useful. We really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. And let's say goodbye to everyone, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks for being
everyone.
here.
Thanks.